Here we are. Is Your Audio Sound? Installment 5, Secrets Behind the Pew. This is a podcast for people doing audio in church. The ideas are relevant in all live sound applications, but the words and examples I use are mostly from the church context. I avoid using technical jargon and use everyday words in an attempt to make what seems complex a little easier to understand. There are many times in our sound world where the best way to get the best results is to begin with the physical considerations. The downstream electronics are only so good and may not be able to help you out. I totally concede that we don't have control over some or even many of the things I'm about to talk about, but it is good to know the ideals so we can understand the compromises we are making and the likely impact of those compromises. I do acknowledge that I am keeping this very simple, using simple equipment examples, and that as each day passes, some super whiz PhD sound professor may come up with a new way to defy physics and make perfect sound come out of a wet sock. But I am old school and like to try to start and set up with firm foundations. So before we start, a quick understanding of my positional language. I always talk positions from the congregational view, also known as the camera view. This is based on the audio console being at the back of the congregation and looking at the platform, which I will henceforth call the stage. So when I say left, I mean left from the mixing position. From the stage dweller's perspective, this would be stage right. The astute among you will notice the naming and numbering I am describing complements a physical or digital mixer. The leftmost channel is number 1, heading right to 12 or 16 or an even bigger number. So if I have 5 vocal microphones across the front of stage, I would refer to them as 1 to 5, left to right. If I have 4 vocal microphones across the front of stage and another 4 across the rear of the stage, I would call them 1 to 8. That is 1 to 4, left to right at the front, 5 to 8, left to right at the rear. You can call things what you like, but it is super helpful if everyone on your team names and describes things in the same way. An awesome example. In our church, one of the team plugs things in according to the order of importance. This was fine until one day his wife asked what channel she should plug her bass into. So having sorted our language, I'm going to start with speaker placement. The main speakers pointing to the congregation are referred to by a number of different interchangeable names. The ones that come to mind are left and right, left and centre and right, front of house, centre cluster, or main speakers. There are a few configurations to discuss here, so how about you find a seat right in the middle of your church space? Imagine your lectern is centre stage, and I will try to keep this general and simple. For an installed system, you will usually have a speaker to the left and to the right of the stage, somewhere above head height, and hopefully slightly forward of the stage. An alternative, or an addition, is a single speaker or cluster of speakers in the centre, usually up high and slightly forward of the stage. So you'll hopefully recall in installment 1, I spoke about our desire for the sound to at least appear to come from the person who is speaking. If someone's mouth is moving in front of me, but the sound is coming from my left, then my brain thinks this is weird. So sitting where you are, in the middle of your space, stretch out your arm to point at the right speaker location. Look at the lectern in the middle. Now move your arm to point at the centre speaker location. Look at the lectern in the middle. Can you see that the sound from the middle speaker is going to represent the location of a person at that lectern more faithfully than one of the side speakers? Now, go and sit in the second row near the front, but over near the left wall. Repeat your arm movement from left speaker location to the lectern to the centre speaker location to the lectern. In this position, the directional effect is really significant. Another benefit of the centre speaker cluster is that generally the distance from the closest congregation member to the furthest congregation member is smaller than from the left or right speakers. You might want to pull out your high school Pythagoras theorem to confirm this one, but it is true. This means that a centre cluster should provide more even coverage across your room. Hopefully, this quick exercise and explanation has helped you understand the benefits of a centre cluster. It is often not easy to get speakers up there, but it's great if we can. A drawback of a centre cluster that it is harder to get good gain before feedback, or in non-jargon, turn it up loud enough before the system makes that dreadful squealing sound. The microphone at the centre of stage is generally physically closer to a centre cluster than it is to the side-mounted speakers, so it provides more opportunity for feedback. As an example, our church meets in a school hall with a left, centre, right system. We set up on a sub-stage in front of the main stage, so we're actually in front of the centre speaker. We have chosen to turn the centre speaker off because the lack of gain before feedback, as discussed earlier, does not allow us to faithfully reproduce the spoken word. In technical terms, it sounds yuck. The argument for side-mounted speakers are not particularly compelling. It is generally easier to mount speakers beside stage. There are usually walls there somewhere. We can create a stereo image. That is, we can represent the position of the music team within the stereo image. But is it fair for the people on the left of the room not to hear what the people on the right side are playing? Many keyboards and electric guitar setups often have stereo effects built in. But does it add much? Most of the sound sources on stage are actually mono, M-O-N-O. That means a single sound from a single source. So we can send the same signal to each of the left and right speakers. I like to call it glorious monophonic. For those of us who are deploying temporary systems, we are usually replicating the left-right that we discussed with installed systems. It really is important to place the speakers a good distance in front of the stage, about a metre, and out to the sides. This physical location will combat feedback, as I discussed earlier. You should also get the speakers up as high as is safe with your hardware, resources, and environment. To get the projecting audio over the heads of the front rowers and achieve the best result possible for the back rowers. As much as possible, you want to achieve the impossible of not blasting the front rows while providing excellent sound to the back rows. So there we are. The Secrets Behind the Pew installment is a wrap. In other 10-minute installments, our thoughts will include: why is my lounge important? What is causing that feedback? Where do I put this microphone? If you haven't listened to installment 1, please do so, as it's the starting point to launch from. All the other installments are optional, but in a suggested order. Many of the ideas do overlap and should help you on your journey. But until that day comes, I will go and warn the darkness that the light of Jesus Christ has overcome.